This week of Hell March, we're going to discuss the villainous faction of Red Alert, the Soviet Union. This massive union of Eurasian nations has gained power over the previous decades and is now making its move to achieve manifest destiny, Joseph Stalin's dream for a nation stretching from coast to coast in what would become known as the Great War. The Soviet Union is introduced in the game as a fictionalized representation of the real-life USSR founded in 1922. The Soviet Union is propelled by the dream of its dictator, Joseph Stalin, to achieve a manifest destiny, a nation stretching from ocean to ocean. Further, Stalin wants a Soviet Union that dominates the globe and rules the hearts and minds of every citizen of the world. There is little of the Soviet Union left in the world in the original Command and Conquer, as it takes place in the years immediately following its collapse. Though there are bits of its technology present, like the Mammoth tank and the SAM-side aerial defense system. As we go through the people of the Soviet Union, as well as the campaign, we may find that there is more connection between the two games concerning the Soviets than first appears on the surface. The Soviet Union primarily consisted of Russia, with 14 other smaller associated Eurasian nations and outpost countries in Africa and Asia. The Soviet invasion began not with an attack on Europe, but on neighboring China, retaking lands stolen from Russia. With the possible threat to the south subdued, Stalin turned his attention to the west. The Soviet Union's financial assets are believed to be in excess of 486.2 billion Swiss francs, or over $29 trillion inflation adjusted. Its enlisted strength was 14 million, with an extra 7 million in non-regular forces. Politically speaking, every citizen of the Soviet Union is a member of the Communist Party, an incredible network of over 200 million citizens, including those who are suspected to have infiltrated governments in most Pan-African, Pan-Indian, Pan-Asian nations, and possibly strongholds in Mexico City and Vancouver. The Soviet Union's war doctrine is based upon bringing its considerable military force to bear in the war theater. Its military force is heavily mechanized and relies on overwhelmingly strong, if not technologically advanced, power. By the time the war is in its later stages, the Soviet force will be characterized by large destructive military pieces, in contrast to the smaller, more maneuverable, but more technologically advanced forces of the Allied forces. The Soviet Union is led by the premier, Joseph Stalin, who holds absolute authority, or so he thinks. In the early missions of the campaign, he is reserved and direct, but as the game continues, we see him act petulantly when he does not get his way. He is confident of his success all the way to the end. Serving as field commander in the first half of the game is General Grodinko, hero of the Asian campaign. He provides the player with his early missions and heads the Iron Curtain project until his failures grow too numerous. He is eventually replaced by General Kukov, who serves in the same capacity, before being executed as well. Soviet intelligence is headed by Nadia Zelenkov, who quite obviously is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, including a hidden affair with Stalin himself. When the dust settles at the end of the campaign, she is the last one standing. Or almost the last one standing. There's one last character in the Soviet campaign that certainly bears some discussion. A man who enters on occasion to whisper promptings in Stalin's ear, some of which seem to change his mind. He has no words that we hear until the very end of the campaign. I'm talking about none other than Kane, future leader of the Brotherhood of Nod. What role does he serve in the Soviet Union? What purposes does he have? Is this part of his work with the Brotherhood? We'll discuss that after we work our way through the campaign. The player character is never named and has not received one retroactively, but is known as Field Commander S7. Just as with the Allied campaign, the Soviet campaign takes place in Europe, with the Soviets advancing upon an unsuspecting West. The campaign opens to Stalin ordering full-scale production of sarin gas to be used against Europe in the coming war. Grodinko alerts Stalin to a group of Polish guerrilla fighters that have barricaded several roads leading into Turin. The player is sent to wipe them out. The next mission features a protection assignment as the Soviets build up their forces along the border with Germany. They are gaining the attention of the Allies. In order to prevent their attack corridor from being ruined, the commander is assigned the monitoring and protection of a base along the border, as well as the bridge that will be used to enter Germany. The next mission opens with Nadia and Grodinko arguing over the speed at which Soviet tank divisions are advancing across Europe. The map in the background shows that several European countries, Germany included, have been invaded. Suddenly, Kane enters to whisper in Stalin's ears, apparently informing him that one of the primary sites of sarin gas research has been taken by the Allies and that Einstein has been captured. Nadia does not know where Einstein is, but she does know who betrayed them, and it falls to the commander to hunt him down and kill him. This is followed by a hit-and-run mission designed to disrupt Allied communications in preparation for the final attack on Berlin, and a mission to capture Caucasus Island for the ore there. The next mission sees Stalin throwing a temper tantrum over the resistance they are still encountering. Nadia, eager to escape his anger, informs him that the United Nations are now supporting the Allied forces, but she assures him the Soviet nuclear bombs are almost ready, only lacking some parts that need to be transported to Gorsau. Stalin orders you to successfully escort the trucks to their destination, or don't come back. The next mission sees us rushing back to Moscow as the Allies have infiltrated a nuclear reactor facility and deactivated the cooling system. With the reactor back online, the focus returns to the invasion. Kukov grants the commander a brief glimpse of a hidden camera in Stalin's bedroom revealing his affair with Nadia. Their tryst to celebrate the fall of Berlin is interrupted by a call, which Kukov reveals is an emergency briefing. In the conference room, Grodinko has footage sent from Elba Island. The Allies have a new weapon that allows them to transport entire units around the world instantaneously. Stalin orders the commander to take Elba Island and find out what this weapon is. This is followed up by a drunken meeting between Stalin and Grodinko. Stalin provides him a list of names brought by Kane to have him sign for execution. Kukov and Nadia, who were spying on this meeting, order the commander to destroy a truck abandoned by Grodinko which held crucial parts for the Iron Curtain superweapon. Next, we see a shift similar to that in new construction options from Tiberium Dawn. Grodinko arrives for the meeting and finds Nadia there with some tea she has prepared. He drinks and compliments her on it. A moment later, he begins to convulse as Nadia lectures him on his incompetence and the threat it poses to the Iron Curtain. He lunges at her, but dies on the table. Kukov arrives and is angry at Nadia because dealing with traitors is his job. Nadia informs the commander of an upcoming naval attack and orders him to prevent it. This mission is the most sea warfare focused and really makes use of the submarine. The next mission opens to Stalin, Nadia, Kukov, and Kane watching stolen footage of the chronosphere in action. Stalin is furious about this weapon, declaring that he wants it by any means. As he grows angry at being surrounded by incompetence, Kane grips his arm and whispers into his ear. Stalin calms and orders the commander to capture 3 control centers that will assist in the chronosphere's capture. The final stages of the Soviet campaign sees the noose tightening around the Allies' neck. While the attempt to capture the chronosphere in the previous mission failed, the Soviets did succeed in capturing Einstein. In a stroke of genius, Nadia equipped him with a tracking device and leaked the time of his public execution, knowing the Allies would use the chronosphere to retrieve him and unwittingly reveal the location of the superweapon. The commander is dispatched to capture the chronosphere. Unfortunately, the Allies foresaw this possibility and rigged the weapon to self-destruct. The final mission briefing finds Stalin in an outrage, furious at the commander for failing. Kukov is eager to throw the commander under the bus, and Stalin orders the player's execution. Nadia interjects, shifting the blame from the commander to Kukov. Stalin grabs him from behind and breaks his neck. Nadia reveals that the Allies have fallen back to their final stronghold in Europe, England. Stalin orders the commander to assemble a strike force and destroy the last vestiges of the Allied forces. Nadia tries to argue with him, reasoning that the goal was taking continental Europe, but she is shouted down and threatened with Kukov's fate. The closing cinematic shows Stalin in Buckingham Palace watching a communist parade in London. He comments to Kane how easy the English have adapted to their new overlords and begins to celebrate. Nadia brings tea for them and Stalin happily drinks. A moment later, he begins to choke, realizing that he has been poisoned. He curses Nadia and dies. Nadia grabs a gun from Kane and shoots his corpse. Kane moves to stand behind her as she turns to the commander and explains that the chaos in Europe will serve the Brotherhood's cause. She says that they have remained hidden for centuries, but the time has come to make themselves known. That's right. This whole war was nothing but a ruse by the Brotherhood of Nod to prepare the way for it to make its bid for world domination. She quotes Genesis 4:16 about Cain going out from the presence of the Lord and settling in the land of Nod. She congratulates the commander for his work and estimates that they will have no need of the Soviet Union after the 1990s. Until then, the commander will serve them as an obedient servant for the foreseeable future. The tables turn again as Kane shoots Nadia in the back and says his only two audible lines.
The foreseeable future. Comrade Chairman, I am the future.
It's a great ending to the campaign, turning out exactly how you expect the Soviets to go, with everyone but one character dead. Kane's appearance, as well as the mentions of the Brotherhood, raises some interesting questions which we can discuss in a bit. The Soviet arsenal is differentiated by its heavy firepower. Over the course of the first four Command and Conquer games, I think it's safe to say that the Red Alert Soviet force is the hardest hitting, most destructive force of anyone in the games. This allows the commanding officer to simply overwhelm the enemy with an unstoppable tank and aerial force. If given enough time and resources to build a large tank force, a player would create a force too large for anyone to withstand. The Soviets have six primary production structures: the barracks, the kennel, the war factory, the sub pen, the airfield, and the helipad. The rifle infantry and engineer are basic infantry units for both sides, but the Soviets employ the grenadier, the flame infantry, and the attack dog. Just as in the previous game, the grenadier can be incredibly destructive at long range when grouped together, and the flame infantry can turn entire divisions of enemy infantry to ashes in mere seconds, devastating enemy battle plans before they even begin. The attack dog is the Soviet answer to the Allied spy, trained to see through disguises and attack the enemy spies. The Soviet war effort can be easily crippled by enemy spies, so attack dogs are a vital part of the defense system. The Soviets have no anti-infantry vehicle like the Allied Ranger or Humvee or Buggy from the previous game, but it can bring a whole array of anti-tank and anti-structure weapons to bear. The Soviets have the two largest tanks in the game, the heavy tank and the mammoth tank. The heavy tank has double the firepower of the Allies' largest tank, but sacrifices some speed and maneuverability. The mammoth tank should be no mystery to veterans of the first game, laying out extreme damage to land and air units and preparing itself up to 50% of its health. To damage enemy structures, the Soviets employ the V-2 rocket launcher, which can destroy almost any building with two shots, but requires protection from reprisal. Like the Allies, the Soviets also use anti-tank mine layers, but it is less useful against Allied forces. The Soviets ruled the skies in Red Alert, boasting three different field aircraft and a support aircraft. The basic air unit is the Yak, an anti-infantry plane equipped with machine guns. The higher level Soviet plane is the MiG, a swept wing craft equipped with missiles capable of damaging vehicles and structures. In addition to their two planes, the Soviets also employ the Hind helicopter, which serves as an all-around weapons platform with chain guns and missiles. In addition to its field craft, the Soviets also used the Badger, a large-scale bomber and transport craft. With the Badger, the Soviets could drop parachute bombs on enemy targets and drop paratroopers deep within enemy territory, giving them a range of attack far beyond conventional means. What the Soviets excel at in its aircraft variety, it lacks in sea warfare. Despite boasting a military with a whole host of infantry, tanks, and aircraft, the Soviet solution to control the seas was the submarine. The submarine, built and employed from the sub-pen, could traverse the field of battle unseen until revealing itself with a hail of missile fire. Employed in a sizable enough group, the submarine could devastate enemy naval formations. However, unlike some of the Allied naval vessels, its attacking ability is limited to the sea. To gain a better look at the battlefield, the Soviets employ another aircraft, the spy plane, which will fly in from off-screen and reveal the targeted section of the map. The Soviets have three basic defensive structures for its bases: the anti-infantry flame tower, the anti-tank Tesla coil, and the anti-air SAM site. Both the ground-based defenses, the flame tower and the Tesla coil, are useful against both infantry and tanks, but each works best against one or the other. Just like the flame infantry, the flame tower can reduce whole infantry divisions to ash in an instant, and the Tesla coil fires a bolt of lightning at enemy vehicles, dealing significant damage. The SAM site is the same as the GDI defense structure from the previous game, firing missiles at air-based units. The Soviet Union employs two superweapons on the battlefield, the Iron Curtain and the atomic missile. The Iron Curtain is the pinnacle of Soviet research that allows a single unit or structure to be rendered invulnerable for short periods of time. Entire battle strategies can be formulated around this invulnerable unit, doing significant damage to enemy formations or bases before the shield wears off. The atomic missile is just a damage dealer, causing significant impact to the enemy. Soviet military doctrine is to hit the enemy fast and hard, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and a significant firepower advantage. Westwood has never released a definitive Command and Conquer timeline, similar to The Legend of Zelda, for instance, but they have confirmed some things that we can place with certain in-game information to solidly settle a few items of interest. As I stated in the last video, I think it's undeniable that Westwood intended for this to be a prequel to Command and Conquer. There are just far too many references and crossovers to argue any differently. The problem is that none of the references fit the way they should for it to be a direct line of narrative. It's like trying to put together a puzzle with 10% of the pieces from a different puzzle. The image is there, but it doesn't fit together the way it should. The Soviets clearly have a red version of the Mammoth tank. The mention of the Global Defense Agency is clearly the Global Defense Initiative, and Kane and the Brotherhood of Nod are clearly present and mentioned in the Soviet campaign. But how did GDI get a 50-year-old Soviet tank? Why did it take over 50 years for GDI to actually be created? The only mention of the Brotherhood is in the Soviet victory, which we know didn't happen. So is Nod still present in Red Alert? The split timeline we discussed in the previous video would seem to solve some of those problems, but it doesn't work with what we see in Command and Conquer. So what do we know for sure? We know that in the greater Command and Conquer universe timeline that there was some kind of large-scale war between the Soviet Union and an ad hoc alliance of European, North American, and Australian nations. This war seems to have been orchestrated by agents of an ancient clandestine organization for the purpose of creating chaos in Eurasia. This chaos achieves several goals. 1. The coalescing of Western powers around a central defense agency. 2. The devastation of Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And 3. The exhaustion and collapse of the Soviet Union. This chaos served to create a massive territory ripe for the Brotherhood and create a foil for it to fight against, GDI. Any detail beyond that is simply not known until we arrive at Command and Conquer, where the timeline becomes far more easier to define. Then, somewhere along the way, the timeline develops another branch into the Red Alert 2 timeline, which we'll cover at a later date. The Soviets are the clear villain of the story, caring nothing for human life and employing weapons that play on human suffering to gain victory. The Soviets will fall even further into the tactical ethos in future games, dehumanizing people even further to achieve its military goals, going so far as to embrace a dangerous psychic master. We will never know the extent of Nod's role in the war or what its ultimate goals were, but the devastating impact is hard to deny. It'll be interesting to watch how the Soviet Union changes as we move forward from the Tiberium universe's influence. We will conclude this year's Hell March with discussion of the two expansion packs to Red Alert, entitled Counter-Strike and The Aftermath, next week. Now that we've discussed both factions, let me know which one you prefer to play as down below. Thanks for watching.